Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today to learn more about the Carbon Capture Demonstration Projects Program and the recently announced project selections. My name is Kelly Cummins, and I am the Acting Director for the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations, or OCED, as we call it. Before we begin this session, I want to go over a few webinar logistics. You can turn on your live captions by clicking on Captions in your control panel. To turn on Spanish or ASL interpretation, please click on the Interpretation button in your control panel. Finally, you will be able to find a recording of this webinar and a copy of the presentation slides on our website in the next few days. My team and I are so pleased to be speaking with you today about the carbon capture demonstration projects that we have selected to enter into award negotiations. We at OCED are eager to share more about the program and the potential of these carbon capture projects. In this briefing, we will discuss key information for each of the 3 selected projects. We also want to explain what you can expect next, including our upcoming opportunities for engagement and more information about our negotiations process. While we are not taking questions today, we invite you to share your perspective and feedback through the email address we will provide at the end of this presentation. OCED will also be co-hosting 3 additional virtual community briefings for each of the selected projects to hear directly from the local communities. Details will be shared later in this webinar. The United States is committed to addressing the climate crisis and leading the global energy transition, which is why President Biden set ambitious goals for our nation to achieve a net zero economy by 2050. Large-scale deployment of carbon management technologies is critical to addressing the climate crisis and achieving net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Reaching our nation's energy transition goals will require capturing and storing 400 to 1,800 million metric tons of carbon dioxide annually by 2050 through both point source carbon capture, utilization and storage, and carbon dioxide removal. The bipartisan infrastructure law provided $2.5 billion to the Carbon Capture Demonstrations Program for domestic carbon capture demonstration projects. As directed by Congress, these projects will further the development, deployment, and commercialization of technologies to capture and safely store carbon dioxide deep underground. This past Thursday, DOE announced that 3 carbon capture demonstration projects have been selected to enter into award negotiations. We will share more details for each of these projects later in the session. DOE is committed to ensuring that these projects create real economic and environmental benefits for the communities and the workers where they are located. This is why we have worked hard to develop a Community Benefits Plan, or CBP framework, that reflects the administration's strong commitment to provide historic support for underserved communities and deliver on the Justice 40 initiative. The CBPs, which we will discuss in this briefing, are expected to go beyond division or assessment, align with the needs and priorities of impacted communities, and include actionable goals, outcomes, and propose clear metrics to measure success. As you all know, the success of our clean energy transition requires communities and federally recognized tribal nations to be consulted and engaged often and early. It will require transparency and accountability and new approaches to solve old and persistent problems. We all know this transition presents vast opportunities to build a better economy, create millions of good-paying jobs, clean our water and air, and ensure all Americans can live healthier, safer, stronger lives. Because of this, we are truly excited about the potential for these carbon capture projects to do good for our communities, for our nation, and for our climate. Before we get into each of the selected projects, I'd like to share more about carbon capture technology, the Carbon Capture Demonstration Projects Program, and OCED's commitment to community benefits. Let's start by understanding some basics of carbon capture and storage, or CCS. CCS begins by capturing carbon dioxide before it enters the atmosphere. Typically, carbon capture equipment is placed at or near the source of emissions, like a power plant or industrial facility. This is known as point source capture. After the CO2 is captured, it is compressed so that it can be transported more easily by pipelines, truck, rail, or ships. Transportation is the second major part of this overall system. The last step is to safely and permanently store the CO2 in geologic formations deep underground. There are rigorous requirements that projects must meet before they can inject and store the CO2. The Environmental Protection Agency's Underground Injection Control Program exists to ensure underground drinking water is not compromised. To inject CO2 for permanent storage, projects must obtain a Class 6 permit, which has strict requirements for seismicity, continuous monitoring of the storage site for issues like leakage, and post-injection site care and monitoring, in addition to significant requirements to protect water tables. Because of existing state and federal requirements, CCS projects in the United States must be highly selective about where they store CO2, running extensive geologic assessments and modeling exercises before anything goes underground. But why do we need carbon capture and storage? Carbon capture and storage technology have the potential to offer numerous benefits when deployed at scale. First, because it captures CO2 at the source, CCS technology prevents carbon dioxide from being emitted to the atmosphere, which reduces its climate impacts. In some applications, point source carbon capture can also reduce emissions of health-harming pollutants, such as sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, and particulate matter. So while CCS is not designed to control these air pollutants, CCS projects have the potential to create healthier air for communities. CCS technology enables us to decarbonize our existing infrastructure by upgrading the assets we already have in the power and industrial sectors. By demonstrating advances in CCS technology in the US, we can increase our global competitiveness as other countries look for technology solutions that can help them achieve their own decarbonization goals. CCS technology also allows us to maintain good quality jobs in traditional energy and manufacturing while reducing carbon emissions and advancing the clean energy economy. Last but not least, deploying CCS technology will be critical to reaching President Biden's net zero goals, including the nation's goal of carbon-free electricity by 2030. To achieve these benefits, CCS technology needs to scale up, and both public and private sector investment will be critical to demonstrate and advance CCS technology development. That's where the Carbon Capture Demonstration Projects program comes in. Through the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, Congress authorized $2.5 billion in funding for carbon capture demonstration projects. The Carbon Capture Demonstration Projects program aims to demonstrate substantial improvements in the efficiency, effectiveness, cost, and environmental performance of carbon capture technologies for power, industrial, and other commercial applications. Through this program, DOE also aims to increase US manufacturing competitiveness in the global transition to a clean energy economy by demonstrating commercial scale carbon capture technologies, pipeline transportation, and geologic storage infrastructure. Earlier this year, OSED released a $1.7 billion funding opportunity announcement to fund up to 6 CCS demonstration projects. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law requires that these projects demonstrate diverse uses of CCS technology. Specifically, 2 projects must be at coal power plants, 2 projects must be at natural gas power plants, and 2 projects must be at industrial facilities. This past Thursday, OSED announced that the 3 projects were selected to negotiate awards. DOE plans to issue an additional funding opportunity announcement for this program in the future to meet the congressional mandate of 6 projects, including for projects capturing carbon at industrial sites. Please sign up for OSED alerts to stay updated on our announcements, including future funding opportunity announcements. To advance the Carbon Capture Demonstration Projects program, DOE has also made funding available for front-end engineering and design studies for CCS systems, which is a critical first step ahead of a larger scale demonstration. It is important to note that these FEED study projects are different than the projects that we are talking about today. Each FEED study will conduct early stage engineering and design studies to inform future potential CCS demonstration projects. FEED studies are commonly used across industries to inform project scope and technical details prior to construction. All of OSED's programs, including the Carbon Capture Demonstration Projects program, are covered by the Biden administration's Justice 40 initiative. Justice 40 creates a goal that 40% of the overall benefits of certain federal investments, including those in clean energy, flow to disadvantaged communities. I want to highlight that the 40% refers to the benefits of funding, not to 40% of the funding itself. The Justice 40 initiative does not provide any separate or additional funding to these projects, but creates a strong accountability and transparency framework so that the energy transition can be equitable. DOE is implementing Justice 40 through our community benefits process, which is a key to the success of each carbon capture demonstration project. Community benefits plans have 4 interdependent parts. First, community and labor engagement, which seeks to involve those impacted in decisions that affect them and create projects responsive to the needs of communities and workers. Second, diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, or DEIA, which seeks to help build a clean energy economy reflective of all Americans and ensure equitable access to wealth-building opportunities for all, especially those facing systemic barriers to employment or entrepreneurship. Third, investing in the American workforce to build the skilled long-term workforce needed to power the energy transition, create quality family-sustaining jobs with the free and fair choice to join or form a union, and ensure quality jobs are open to all Americans. And fourth, the Justice 40 initiative, to maximize project benefits, minimize harms, and support the goal that 40% of benefits accrue to disadvantaged communities so that all communities can help lead the clean energy economy. Each carbon capture demonstration project was required to develop a community benefits plan to ensure that local communities and workers are engaged in these projects from the outset and receive concrete benefits. And OSED will provide robust project management oversight of the CBP implementation throughout the project lifecycle. DOE's engagement with communities and tribes is beginning during negotiations, while we work with selectees to strengthen their community benefits and incorporate input. If projects are awarded, the community benefits will evolve as the project is developed to result in measurable impacts, and those commitments will be shared publicly. Now that you have more context for the program and how it fits into our climate and equity goals, I will turn things over to Todd Schrader to share more details about the projects we've selected for award negotiations. Todd is the Director of Project Management at OSED. Over to you, Todd.
Thank you, Kelly. And as Kelly mentioned, we've selected 3 of these projects. So we can move to the next slide. We'll talk about where they are and what they do. So as you can see from the map, they are geographically diverse projects, one in North Dakota, one in Texas, one in California. So the one in California, start there, is in Northern California, and it's the Sutter decarbonization project. And it will capture carbon dioxide from the Sutter Energy Center, which is a natural gas combined cycle plant near Yuba City. In North Dakota, Project Tundra. It will capture carbon dioxide from the Milton R. Young coal-fired power plant near Sutter, North Dakota. And down on the Gulf Coast in Texas, near Baytown, is the carbon capture, the Baytown Carbon Capture and Sequestration Project, and it'll capture carbon dioxide from the Baytown Energy Center, which is a natural gas combined cycle power plant in Baytown, Texas, near Houston. So let me share a little bit, next slide, please, about these projects sort of collectively and then individually. Collectively, they will capture up to 7.75 million metric tons of carbon dioxide every year and prevent it from being released into the atmosphere. This is the equivalent of the emissions from 1.7 million gasoline-powered cars going forward. These projects, or the CO2 from these projects, will be permanently stored safely and securely in geological formations deep underground. The projects, in this case, none of the CO2 will be used for enhanced oil recovery, but as I said, sequestered underground. They're first of a kind in their demonstration on natural gas combined cycle power plants and the first of a kind use of saline storage for captured CO2. In addition, the California project uses air cooling, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Again, the real benefits also from this are not only do they reduce emissions, but they provide local benefits to the communities. You've heard about technology, but also these projects will retain and create good paying jobs and create and contribute to job training programs for future workforce for these facilities. And these will be in partnerships with local labor unions, universities, and others. And it also will really help to spur this supply chain diversity through these activities, and in particular, diversities with partnerships of minority-owned businesses in the supply chain itself. Now I'll go through each of the projects in a little bit more detail. So next slide, please. Project Tundra. Again, I mentioned this was up at the Milton Young Station in North Dakota. It's going to use a capture technology to capture 95% of the carbon dioxide emissions from unit number 2 at the facility, and about 20% from a second unit at the facility. This will lead to a combined capture of 4 million metric tons per year. It will be safely and permanently stored in saline geologic formations. This is the first for this type of technology, beneath and surrounding the power plant itself. Project Tundra is evaluating opportunities to create community benefits agreements and other related agreements with the impacted communities. They've engaged with organized labor to discuss the prospect of negotiating project labor agreements, and are committed to continued engagement with stakeholders throughout the process itself. The project sponsors, they envision it's about 25 permanent jobs from this, but as you can imagine, during construction, more and upwards of 400 construction jobs during the construction phase of this project going forward. The applicant was Project Tundra, and is the applicant for Project Tundra is Dakota Carbon Center East Project LLC, and they're led by Minn Kota Power Cooperative and TC Energy. Both companies have long histories in the area. Minn Kota Power Cooperative is a member-owned, not-for-profit electric generation and transmission cooperative in North Dakota, and TC Energy has more than 70 years of experience operating pipeline storage facilities and power generation plants throughout North America. If awarded, the federal cost share is up to $350 million for this project. Next slide, please. Next to Northern California. This is the Sutter decarbonization project. Mentioned it before. This plant plans to capture about or up to 1.75 million metric tons of carbon dioxide yearly, or roughly 95% of the carbon dioxide emissions from the power plant itself. This will be one of the first full-scale demonstrations of carbon capture at a natural gas combined cycle power plant. And this carbon will be permanently stored underground in a saline geologic formation approximately 10 miles away from the plant itself. As I mentioned, what's particularly exciting about this plant and project is it'll be the first in the world to deploy an air-cooled system, which eliminates the use of cooling water and significantly minimizes freshwater usage for the facility. This was in particular a concern raised by the community, and responsible water use was an action that the company took on and the project took on, and we see it as critical for further deployment of carbon capture, particularly in the Western U.S. where there is less water resources at times. The project has already incorporated this community feedback, and others in design has made changes to things like the absorber column height, sound dampening systems, and the cooling method, as I mentioned also. They're in the process of negotiating a project labor agreement and plan to engage local labor organizations and educational institutions to get the qualified labor they need, not just now, but into the future. That includes approximately 1.5 million hours of construction work and all the workers associated with that, and 15 to 20 permanent jobs, along with support for 10 paid internships from minority serving institutions to create pathways for the future. They will also support their accountability and transparency by partnering with Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory to develop a data sharing protocol to track the impacts and community benefit program implementation. The prime applicant was Sutter Decarbonization Project. For this is Sutter CCUS LLC, which is a subsidiary of Calpine. And Calpine is one of America's largest generators of electricity from natural gas and geothermal resources. If awarded, the federal cost share is up to $270 million. Next slide, please. Finally, down Texas, This is also a Calpine project that I just mentioned. This one is the Baytown CCS project, and to be deployed near the facility at Baytown Energy Center in Baytown, Texas. They will capture up to 2 million metric tons of carbon dioxide per year, roughly 95% of the CO2 emissions of 2 of the 3 generating units. The Baytown project will be one of the first full-scale demonstrations of carbon capture at a natural gas combined cycle power plant, similar to the one in California, these deployments. The sequestration will occur at storage sites on the Gulf Coast. The project is evaluating the use of gray water as opposed to fresh water, which would minimize freshwater consumption by reusing wastewater. Excuse me. Baytown project plans to develop a community benefits agreement to ensure the project delivers benefits to the local community, and has already incorporated community feedback into the project designs to reduce the non-CO2 air pollutants in addition to minimizing the freshwater usage. It's estimated a similar number of construction jobs or construction hours, and again, 22 to 26 permanent jobs, and similar to California, development in support of 10 paid internships from Hispanic serving institutions or HBCUs in the area to provide pathways to employment for the interns. It also has a goal of 10% diverse supplier spending, and will similarly employ a third-party monitoring for the community benefits. Finally, the prime applicant for the project is Calpine Texas CCUS Holdings. And again, I mentioned a subsidiary of Calpine Corporation. And if awarded, the federal cost share is up to $270 million. So now that I've shared some detailed information of projects, I'll hand it back to Kelly to talk about the next steps.
Thanks, Todd. As we've mentioned previously, OSED is currently starting the negotiations process with each of these selectees that Todd just mentioned. These projects have not been awarded or received any funds from DOE yet. During the negotiations process, OSED will discuss how the selectees can make their projects more robust from a technical, financial, and community benefits standpoint. If the negotiations are successful, they conclude with an award. OSED and the project teams will enter into a cooperative agreement, which gives OSED substantial involvement throughout the public-private partnership. After award, we will then move into phase 1, the detailed project planning phase. During this phase, DOE will be actively engaging with our commercial partners and impacted communities. At this point, project scope will be more defined, so we will be able to share more detailed project information, including a summary of the community benefits commitments. DOE will also ensure compliance with the National Environmental Policy Act and with the National Historic Preservation Act, including required engagement with communities and tribes. Broadly, project stakeholders should expect some significant engagement with OSED and future awardees. DOE is also exploring how regional frameworks can bolster collaboration across partners and projects to maximize benefits. Such efforts will be aligned with the OSED engagement activities. This slide shows the timeline for these carbon capture demonstration projects and highlights a few actions that you can take today to get involved. We are currently in the bottom left of this timeline, where projects have been selected and will be entering negotiations with DOE. During negotiations, we encourage you to read more about the selected projects on our website, including an initial summary of their community benefits plans. In addition, we invite local community members to attend project-specific community briefings the week of January 8th. I will discuss these in more detail in the next slide. DOE will consider information learned during these early engagements to inform our negotiation process, which means that your feedback can help shape how projects progress. You can always share questions or comments directly with DOE by emailing engage_ccs@hq.doe.gov. I want to emphasize that we are at the very beginning of a long process. These projects will take years to come to fruition and will have to pass through 2 phases before any construction activities begin. For projects that successfully get through negotiations and receive funding in an award, there will be additional ways folks can get involved. Projects that are awarded will progress through a phased approach made up of 4 phases shown in the top right of the slide. Engagement will be ongoing throughout all of these phases, And one of DOE's oversight roles is to ensure that meaningful engagement continues regularly in each phase. Between each phase, DOE will assess the project's progress and will make a decision about whether the project should receive additional funding. We call this a go, no-go review. For projects that succeed in progressing to the next phase, the activities for that phase, including community benefits, will be negotiated, and the commitments that come out of that process will be posted publicly on our website. This process repeats for each phase: ongoing implementation and engagement throughout the phase, go, no-go decision at the end of the phase, negotiation of the next scope phase, and publication of commitments. And finally, in addition to these steps, all of these projects are subject to the National Environmental Policy Act, which includes robust public participation processes. These processes will occur primarily during phases 1 and 2. Now that we've shared the timeline overall, let's discuss one of the next steps you can take to get involved. In January, OSED and the project selectees are co-hosting 3 virtual community briefings to share information with the communities located near project sites. These briefings are just an early but important step in broadening engagement between DOE, the selectees, and the communities impacted by these projects. Although these projects have not been awarded for funding yet, OSED is committed to transparency, understanding community concerns and priorities, and rapidly integrating feedback into plans. These briefings will focus on hearing from community members, especially local community members. You can register to attend the project briefings through our website, and we'll put the link in the chat. If you have questions about the CCS demonstrations program or the specific projects in your area, please email engage_ccs@hq.doe.gov. Please also sign up to receive OSED news and updates. This is the best resource to stay in the know about OSED. We've also compiled some resources for you to learn more about some of the topics we discussed in this session. My colleague will put these links in the chat. We will also share these slides with all registrants and post them on our website, so you'll have access to all of these links later as well. With that, I want to say thank you again for attending this session. We really appreciate you taking the time out of your week to hear about the CCS demonstrations program and the selected projects. Please don't hesitate to reach out to us with any questions or concerns. Thank you.